Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny. Welcome back to another edition of the Leading from the Middle podcast. This is the podcast for middle managers who want to develop themselves, develop their teams, and improve their results. Leaders, how do you lay the foundation for a high performing work environment? How do you maximize your sales and your marketing? How do you increase your own productivity as well as your teams? How do strategic plans equal better results? Or I should say, making great strategic plans equal getting to better results. Well, I spoke to a great leader, Robert Indries, joined me today. He is the co-founder of Westrum. He is also a software developer. He's a marketer. He also is a business owner, and he's done a little bit of everything. Wait till you hear his advice for leaders today and the skills that leaders need to have to implement all this. You don't want to miss a second. Let's get at it.
This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. How do funded startup founders attract prospects and talent? Podcast interviews. How do entrepreneurs with exits find new deals? Podcast interviews. How do C-suite execs differentiate in crowded markets? Podcast interviews. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. Click the link in the show notes for a special offer. Celebrate good conversation.
Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny. Welcome back to another edition of the Leading from the Middle podcast. I have got a phenomenal leader today who is going to talk about things for you from such a different perspective, because he's been on every side of the coin. He's probably been a middle manager before, been a CEO, business owner. And so the advice that he's going to give, make sure you are taking notes today. So I want to introduce business owner Robert Indries today to the podcast. Robert, it is so great to have you here. How are you, sir?
Thank you so much, Kenny. I feel amazing.
Yeah, oh, that's fantastic. Fantastic. Well, first now, Romania, you have just this unbelievable backstory. It's unbelievable in my opinion. And I think everybody's going to find it the same way. Tell us about your backstory and why Romania, and what were those steps that led you to do what you're doing right now?
Sure. So when I was very young, I was born on a farm, right? We were feeding chicken, walking cows, working the land and so on and so forth. So all of that good stuff. If you wanted milk, you had to go to the cow, right? So that's how you would get milk. And so various things have impacted my life. And one of those things was the moment I found an amazing book in a library called The Evolution of Technology, right? I really love that book. Looked at every single page cover to cover. It was so cool. And I said, I want to do this, right? And this was when I was like 10, right?
Wow.
So very fortunate to have found that book early in my life. And so that's one of the reasons why I invest in books. And I when I say I invest in, like I invest in the industry of books, in the industry of education and so on and so forth, because people can get the knowledge they need to go in the direction in their life that can be life-changing for them and everyone else around them. So basically I then started doing engineering work. I was going to scrap places where people would throw things away, like the garbage places, and I would get everything that's broken and figure out how it works, and unscrew it and look at the motherboard and see how things are connected to one another. So I was doing that when I was very young, and I really loved it. The first time when we got a computer, I literally opened the case. I was looking at everything in it and so on. So
Yeah.
we're doing things like that. And then at one point, I had all sorts of odd jobs when I was younger. And then at one point, I got the opportunity to automatize the systems in a manufacturing plant. So I really enjoyed that because it was a real world value attached to my work, right? So really cool. So I built various systems for them that they needed and so on. It's a longer story, but we won't have time to go into today. But I managed to do that for them. They're very happy. They were shocked that I could do it. And the reason why they were shocked, because I was 15 at the time.
Wow.
So I built all
Wow.
of their tech when I was 15. I really liked it. And so it was a very cool thing. And then I realized, oh, I can do more of this, more of this, more of this. So I kept doing more. And I eventually did start my own engineering company. We've so far delivered on over 200 projects in 19 different sectors with specialists across 14 different time zones, over 100
Wow.
staff. Right.
Wow.
So very happy with everything we've managed to do with my portfolio of companies so far. And the way we measure things is by business value attained, right? Revenue generated, cost cut, and so on and so forth. So far we've drawn the line a little bit earlier this year, and we have passed $500 million
Wow.
in business value generated for our clients so
That's
far.
amazing.
So
Amazing.
we're very happy with that result, as you can imagine. And so based on that, I've had the opportunity to travel a lot, to meet clients all over the world. I specifically loved, just going to places for like a week, not just for the meeting, right? So I would, for example, I still remember the first time I met one of my partners. We went to Boston. We had a client in Boston. They wanted us to do a quarterly report and so on. And they said, can't you guys come in person? I'm like, sure, why not? And then we flew in, right? And we spent an entire week there. It was so cool. Spent a
Yes.
lot of time together, went to comedy shows, went to see what is there, Harvard or something like that, right? So we saw that. So
Yes.
cool stuff.
Yeah.
And so we did a lot of that. And then around 7 years ago, and I did a lot of traveling. So it's hundreds, at least 100,000. I don't know if I passed 200,000 miles
Oh my
traveled, but
gosh.
it's over 100,000 miles so far. And then we settled in the UK with my wife in Sheffield. Love the place, amazing city, very, very good, familiar vibe, everything you would ever need. IKEA is there, huge malls, everything,
Hmm.
You have the Peak District, you have Manchester an hour away, London's 3 hour away, right? Edinburgh is, a few hours north. So a lot of cool stuff. And then at one point, a little over a year ago, we had many reasons to leave the UK.
Hmm.
However, the main reason was taxes. So in our income bracket, taxes are 45% in the UK.
That's crazy.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, you give yourself $1 million, you only keep $500,000. The other
Yeah.
half you give to the government. And
Yeah.
if they would be doing a good job with that capital, I wouldn't mind, but they're not.
Yeah.
So it's
No.
it's a frivolous waste of money, right? And
Hmm.
let's say not all of it, but at least 2/3 of it is wasted on people that don't want to work, right? And we
Right.
know because we have insight. My wife worked in a government institution for 7 years, right? So we know how much money is wasted on people that send literally 3 emails a day. I kid you
Hmm.
not. That was someone's productivity level. 3 emails
Wow.
sent a day.
Wow. My goodness.
So I'm not going to pay their salary. I'm sorry, it's just not
Yeah.
not not in my values. So
Yeah.
I'll let them keep doing that. And so we wanted to go move to a financial haven, but we wanted to stay in Europe. So there are two financial havens in Europe. One is Portugal, one is Romania.
Hmm.
So because we already had the Romanian citizenship, we said, okay, let's come to Romania. It's easier. Everything is just like we can buy stuff, we could work, we could set up companies, we could do whatever we want. We could do all of that in Portugal as well. It's just I think a little bit different in Romania. We had more connections and so on. So for us, it was okay. And so we did that, and that was maybe a little over a year ago. So we invested in buildings. This is one of the buildings we bought, and we invested in land. We bought like $250,000 in land. So just coming, transitioning here slowly, or things, and we're still in renovation here, but we should finish renovating maybe in 2 weeks. So
Hmm. Wow. What an amazing, amazing journey. And thank you. And Ben, oh man, I hear you on the taxes thing. Oh my gosh. Um, but what an amazing journey that took you there. Let's get into now what you were talking about earlier, and how you fell in love with some things at an early age and really made it work. So, let's get some advice from you. I think the first thing I want to ask you, because I heard you talking about this on another podcast, was high performing work environments. And what are some steps and advice that you can give to really build that high performing work environment? Because you've got teams all over the place, and that is typical of a lot of companies these days and a lot of leaders. What are
Yeah.
some things? What are some steps there, Robert, that you took?
So, 1 second. So basically, when we talk about these subjects, it's very important for everyone listening to understand that typically I would, let's say, be invited to hold a seminar, and that seminar would be at least 3 hours long on any subject.
Right.
Whether we talk about
Yeah.
high performance teams, whether we talk about how to double your business in 12 months, right? I've given seminars on this stuff to everywhere on the planet in 3 different continents, over 10,000 people so far. So I can give you a brief of it, but everyone listening needs to understand that even if this sounds simple, the implementation of it has to be very disciplined, very, very disciplined. Because
Mm,
if you're not very conscious and very disciplined in implementation of these simple truths, then doesn't it won't work, right? It will eventually fail. And so, for example, one of the things is when we talk about high performance teams is, number one, you cannot invent or you cannot make up competence. Competence has to be there.
right.
When you hire someone, I don't care if they're an amazing person, they have to be competent in doing what you need them to do, either competent off the bat or able to learn it,
Hmm.
right? And don't hire someone and give them a full-time salary to learn what they need to do. Why
Mm,
would you do that? Like, you're not their parent. You don't need to pay for their education. Stop doing that, please.
yes.
You're screwing up the market for everyone in the market, right? Because
Mhm.
now people expect to be paid to learn their job, which, no, you should not be paid to learn. You should learn. There's so many courses out there on how to do marketing, how to be a good salesman, how to do programming, how to do anything you want to do, and it costs $50 to learn. So invest the $50, learn it on your dime and on your time, and come to me and do work,
Yeah.
productive work,
Love
right?
that.
And so whenever someone comes to us and says, "Oh, I learned quickly," okay, then you have until next Monday to learn this, and then let's have a conversation on Monday.
Yeah.
Seriously, I mean, come on, if you learn
Love that.
quickly, learn
Yeah.
it, and then let's talk after you learned it,
Yes.
right? And so I don't want to say bad words or whatever, but many times if you've hired anyone in your life, many people say that, "Oh, I don't know how to do that, but I can learn quickly." Okay, here's everything you need to learn. Here's my operations manual. Come back, in 5 days, and I'll question you, and I'll see if you know how to do everything. And that's it. And so very simple stuff. Most people won't be willing to do that. If they're not willing, you shouldn't hire them.
Yeah.
It's simple as that. Simple as that. Don't stop compromising your values. Stop compromising, the A team, you can build for yourself, right? So
Yeah.
number one is competence. You can't fake that, right?
Right.
People on your team are either competent in the positions you put them in or not. If they are not, you cannot possibly create a high performance work environment, because they are not high performers because they are not able to, not because they don't want to. There's a difference between ability and willingness.
Yes.
You need ability. It's a
Yeah.
must. It's a foundation. Ability you need.
Hmm.
Now, after ability, you can build on willingness, right?
Yes.
So we'll talk about that after. So
Yes.
um, let's assume everyone in your work is not perfect. If they're not perfect, you invest in their training. How? You ask them, "Do you want to be good at this?" And they would say, "Yes." Okay. Is this part of your career? Is like, do you want to keep doing this for 5 years, 10 years, whatever? Well, no, I see myself going into this role. Okay, well, let me not invest in you in a sales role if you actually want to be a customer success person.
Hmm.
Have those conversations with people. Find out what they want in their life, like what they want to do, right? I made the mistake a few years ago. I'm never going to make that again, I hope. I was looking for a digital marketing person, and someone applied that had a ton of experience in physical marketing. They were working in a mall and helping the mall grow and so on and so forth. So apparently they're doing great there. And so they said they want a shift in career. They want to go into digital. And I believed them. Why wouldn't you believe them? Like, why would you keep doing physical when you can do digital, right? It's like it's like the future of marketing, right?
Right.
So it made perfect sense to believe them. So I hired them. I paid them a salary. They tried to do work. They failed miserably. And after 6 months, they left because they said, no, actually, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something else.
Yeah. Wow.
And so you're just left with loss of reputation, right? For whatever it is, right? You lost time. You're never going to get back your 20s, by the way, or your 30s, right? It's like every half a year you waste with a bad employee, you'll never get back, right? So, and it's not the same if you become a millionaire by the time you're 50 or 60, or if you become a millionaire by the time you're 30 or 40. It's a very different experience, right, of life in general. So basically, all of these are time wasters, and you want to waste as little time and resources as you can. And time is your most scarce resource. So basically, don't do things like that. I made a mistake, and what I do now is we have what we call PDPs. It's personal development plans.
Yes.
And you have the PDPs typically once a month with people, or however often you can have them. But a manager is responsible to hold PDPs with their staff, and in the PDPs, they need to basically, or you need to be inquisitive as a manager and find out what do they want in 6 months, in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years, like what was their career trajectory, and then help them achieve those goals. If their goal is to change into a different department, help them do that. Even if they're very good in their current department, because they will eventually be unhappy and either do crappy work or mediocre work or just leave because they want to do something else with their life. Don't force them to do things they don't want to do, right? And so help them transition into something else. Okay, so now that you have that, let's assume you've done all of that and you know what people want and so on, and the people that want to be better at something, you give them training. So how do you give them training? It's very important you have that. Okay, so you want to be the best salesperson you can ever be, correct? Yes. Okay, how much are you working per week? 40 hours. Okay, on top of that 40 hours, how much are you willing to learn to actually do better in the 40 hours when you're working and you need to be productive? And they're like, oh, can't I do it whilst I'm working? Well, do you want to be the best salesperson, or do I want you to be the best salesperson? Because there's a big difference. There's a very big. Do you want to be the best salesperson? Do you want to be the best programmer? Do you want to be the best marketer? And so on and so forth. Or do you really want to? Or is it just a woo-woo thing because you or you want to progress in your career or whatever, right? If you're truly passionate about something, not only do I not need to pay you to learn, I cannot stop you from learning. Let's say you're doing sales for me, but you're very passionate about poetry. I cannot stop you from writing poems and from reading poems and so on, because you're intrinsically passionate about it. I don't need to pay you. So this is the type of person I want working for us, right? I want engineers that they do 40 hours of productive time, and in their spare time, they're like, I want to pick up this new language that's coming up, right? Not because I'm telling them to. This is not a corporate requirement. This is me helping you become the most valuable person that you can be in your career, right? And you will level up like crazy, you'll make more money, and so on and so forth, right? But I am not your father. I am not going to pay for your education. I'm going to expect things from you. If I pay you 4K a month, I'm going to expect at least 16 or whatever, in value, right? Because I have a 25% margin. So if you bring me 16K in value, I basically break even from working with you, right? I'm just making this stuff up. You know your numbers. Everyone knows their own numbers, right? So basically, you can have these conversations with people. I don't mind investing in people, and many people that we work with learn on the job. They're like, Robert, I never did this before. Learn it, but do it. Get it done by tomorrow. And guess what? They learn on the job. But whilst they're learning, they are productive. They're getting me the result that I want. It's not taking them 2 hours, it's taking them 4 hours, 6 hours, but they're getting the result, which makes me money, right? And so no one's upset at the end of the day from them learning on the job. Where you get upset is when someone spends time learning and then you feel nothing for it. Like there's no benefit, right? For it. So these are just some perspectives that people listening can, understand. Even for yourself, you should not expect, if you're a middle manager, you should not expect the CEO to come and say, you know what, Kenny, I really like you. I want to become your adoptive father and start spending $1,000 on your education every month from now on. No,
it's not going to happen. Yeah.
And even if it happens, it's not fair.
No, it's not
It's
fair.
not his role. It's not his role to do that. Your parents invested in your education until you're 18 or whatever. Now it's your turn to invest in yourself and to get the results you want, right? For yourself and for your company, right? And so if you're a middle manager and you want to become a better manager, listen to podcasts like this, but don't listen whilst you should be working. Don't do that. That's not fair.
No.
That's you being unethical. That's you not being productive. Listen to this podcast on the road home or on the road to work, right? And then implement what you learn at work. Now that's different, because guess what? Learning is in 2 phases. Number 1 is getting the information. Number 2 is practicing. So practicing new information at work, no one will blame you for that, right? They're like, oh, well, they're trying new things. They're improving our dynamic. They're improving the culture. They're improving the sales procedure. They're, practicing that. Everyone will be all ears. Your CEO will be like, Kenny, I really appreciate you. I don't know how you do it, but this is amazing. Guess who's going to get a promotion? Guess who's going to get a bonus? Guess who's going to get more time off whenever they want it, right? That is how you do that, right? So basically, now we've tackled ability up until now. This is half of the equation, ability. Now the other half is willingness. So we can look to the father of management, Peter Drucker, and he said very, very clearly that what gets I'm paraphrasing, but he said that whatever you want to improve, you have to measure, right? So what gets measured gets improved, right? And so because the simple fact of measuring makes you look at it and say, okay, how can I be better, and so on and so forth, right? So measuring helps with improvement. You cannot improve anything without a baseline. You have to measure, right? You have to measure productivity, you have to measure sales, you have to measure everything, how much you spend, how much you save, and so on and so forth. So everything needs to be measured. The moment you start measuring, you'll get a baseline. And then when you have the baseline, you can then keep measuring and improve. Every time ask yourself, okay, how can I get better results next week? How can I get better results next week? So measuring, everyone in your team needs to understand that logically, from a logical perspective, you can only improve something that is measured. Because if you do not measure it, you don't know if it improves.
How do you know?
It's logical. So many people say, like use stupid things like, excuse my French, by the way, like, why are you measuring me? Or why are you asking? Don't you trust me? Like, how else will I know if this is working? Please, you tell me, how will I know that what you're doing is working if I don't know how much, by when, what's the result, and so on and so forth? I need to know everything. And you need to know everything, because otherwise we can't improve. And they can say, well, we can improve because the only thing that matters is the revenue. Am I making enough money or not? Okay, but Kenny, what if you go sick? And how, like, if I don't know what you're doing, how can I give it to someone else? Well, you won't give it to someone else because I won't be sick forever. Okay, and you're saying that my entire business should suffer because you are sick. It's not enough that you're suffering, that you're sick. I also need to suffer at the same time. Well, no, but nothing, blah, blah, blah. You can imagine the conversation, right? People, I'm just making this stuff up, but people listening can, imagine these conversations.
Yes.
But basically, How many emails are you sending? How many calls are you making, right? Like, how many widgets are you creating? How much of this are you doing? How are you doing it, right? And so on and so forth. Everything needs to be measured. And so that's the first part of willingness. People need to be willing to measure their outcomes, right? And then number two is they need to be willing to become better at those outcomes, right? To do something better. If not every week, then at least every month, right? We have weekly improvements. So every week we ask ourselves, how can we do better this week than last week, right? Every person has to ask themselves, right? We had one of those conversations now on Monday. We were looking at our LinkedIn campaigns, right? We're looking at the result and ask the person, what can we do to improve the result? And she was like, okay, well, she's new, right? So that's her excuse. She's like, well, but I don't know. What do you mean with you don't know? We already discussed this and you have to know. I'm like, well, you said that if this KPI isn't good enough, we need to change the sequence. I'm like, yes, exactly. But Robert, we already changed the sequence last week. And did it work? Well, it didn't. And okay, how many times are you going to change it until it works? Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
You'll change it as many times as necessary
Yeah.
until it works, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you're going to make a change once and then say, okay, well, yeah, I changed it. It didn't work. Okay, you're wrong the first time and you're wrong the second time. How many times can you be wrong?
Yeah.
100 times. Okay, in 2 years, we will become $1 billion company.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's just 50 weeks in a year, right? So basically, you don't need forever. Like, you just keep every week, you just improve, and sooner or later you will crack the code on it, right? And guess what? If it's data driven, 3 months from now, if we keep testing and testing and testing, we know everything that did not work. That's also valuable because we'll never test that again because it didn't work, right? So the next time we do something, it'll be that much better. It's like, it's not like the lottery. It's like, did you ever play something like Russian roulette or exploding kittens or something like that?
No, I know what you're talking about.
But basically, the percentages increase. The
Yes.
more you have
Right.
50 cards,
Yeah.
so you have a 2% chance of getting the Joker, let's say,
Right.
or a 4% chance because there are two Jokers. If you pull a card, now you have a 4 point something percent. If you
Right.
pull 10 cards, now you
Research.
have a 15% chance of
Yeah.
getting a Joker, if you haven't already. If you
Yeah.
pull 20 cards, right, now you have a, whatever, 20% chance to get a Joker, and so on. So your chances keep increasing.
Right.
Why? Because you're smarter. You've already tested 10 things and none of these work. So the 11th thing is something you've never tested before and is not
Right.
part of these 10, right? So every time you become better at doing this, right? And so these are just very, very simple concepts. And again, this podcast is short, right? So I could talk about this for 3 hours and give you so many tools to use. But what I wanted you to get is ability and willingness. So ability we nailed, right? You got that. And willingness, it's the willingness to measure and then the willingness to improve based on the measurements. If you nail down these things, you will have such a high performing sales team that you will rival anyone else in your industry.
Wow. You gave us so much. And I'm just still amazed at the beginning. I love how you said, and I hope that a lot more leaders go to that, because I'm sure I've fallen into that trap before where I'm like, okay, this is a great person, but I'm not sure if they have the ability, but there's ways to find it out. Just unbelievable. I got to ask you one more question, and then I want to ask you also how people can connect with you. That this has just been amazing. What would you say, Robert, are the maybe top 1 or 2 leadership skills that leaders need today? Was it all wrapped in what you said, or is there a couple other specific things that you look for when you're choosing your leaders?
One thing that I saw help me a lot in leadership is, number one, to be numbers oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because at the end of the day, the numbers don't lie. And there's this very funny guy. He has sadly passed since, but his name was what was his? He was the mentor of Tony Robbins. What was his name? Such a cool guy.
Yeah. I could picture who you're talking about. I can't think of his name either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's so good. One second. Tony Robbins' mentor. Tony Robbins' mentor was thank God for Google. Give me a second.
Yes.
Um, Tony Robbins' mentor was oh, I see. He see his face. Jim Rohn, right? So Jim Rohn
Jim Rome.
uh,
Yeah.
said it very well on one of the sessions that he had when he was a sales leader or middle manager, right? He he was having these calls with people or these meetings. They're like, okay, how many calls did you make, right? And he was waiting with his pen to write the number, right? And the guy started giving excuses and blah blah and so on and so forth. And Jim Rome said, okay, Frank, but I can't write all of that here. I can only write one number here, right? It's just a little cell. Look, see how small this cell is? I can't write everything you just said in this small cell. I just need a number, Frank. So could you please give me the number? And so I love that. That's so funny. So I can't write everything you just said. So just give
Yeah.
me the number.
Just
Is
the
it
number.
7? Is it 20? Is it 50? How many
Yeah.
calls did you make? Right.
Yeah.
And so be numbers focused. That's very important. Be numbers focused all the time because your business will not succeed if you're not numbers focused.
Yes.
So that's one. And then number two, something that helps me is to um, always be inquisitive about everything that happens.
Yes.
Because if something doesn't happen or something happens poorly, the average leader yells at someone, right? Or gets upset or, lashes out at someone. So sometimes maybe I still do that to some extent because some accidents are very bad. Like this is one of them happened the other week, and I was in such shock. I couldn't help myself. And I told it this is literally the worst case scenario that could have happened, And they realized that they screwed up, and I'm like, well, I need to fix it now, so let me just spend some time fixing it. And so I helped them fix it, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously, like we screwed up and we take responsibility, but to be inquisitive, right? Like just to ask, could you please explain to me how did this happen? Right? Let me understand. Because if you understand how it happened, you can then ask, okay, what do you think we can put in place so that this never happens again?
Yes.
Right? And then take that mistake from mistake to productivity, right? To a solution, to an outcome that makes the team better, makes the business better. But document it. Don't just have the conversation about it. Say, okay, this happened because of this issue. Say that sometimes when this happens, this is an issue. In order to avoid this, this is the solution, right? And then you write that down in your documentation. And we do this for businesses all the time because people hire us to manage their businesses for them. So we do a lot of that. So basically, it's you write all of that down, and the next manager that comes in, they just literally, it's like Googling within your business. Like they just search the scenario, and the
Right.
scenario is right there. They see what can happen poorly and how they can avoid that and everything else that they can do, right? So those are the two skill sets I would say. So being numbers focused, number one, and then number two, always be inquisitive, always ask, why did this happen? How did this happen? And what could we do, for it to not happen again and so on.
This has been amazing, and I got to tell you, one day I'm going to try to get the 3 hours on your calendar to get to get the full suite. But you answered so much for me in that one answer. I want to just give you a quick compliment because I it's so refreshing to see someone who is so committed to making others better, but through just this asking questions and leading them to where they need to go. I didn't hear you once say, I tell them this is the answer, this is the answer.
No, 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 no,
And,
no.
and I love that you're so committed because, listen, you're at my heart here because the reason I started this podcast is because I've come across, and this will make you cringe, but I'm sure you've come across it too. So many leaders that say, I don't have the time to develop myself. I'm busy enough as it is. And so I'm like, okay, well, you can't listen. I mean, we've been 35 minutes right now. You can't listen in the car for 40 minutes on your way. And you've been to Boston. You saw the commute, and I'm sure you've probably been to New York City as well. And commutes are crazy. So, but I love how you said you can still be productive for the 40 hours. I'll help and I'll guide you, but you need to develop yourself. Man, I loved everything you said. Thank you so much. And please continue to do what you're doing. So I want to leave with this. How can people connect with you and get to work with you?
So anyone that Googles my full name, Robert Indries, they can, the first 3 pages of Google should be about me. So shouldn't
Okay.
be too hard. At the same time, I have a domain, robertindries.com. They could visit my website. I try to update it once or twice a year. So excuse me if it's not updated for a while now. But basically, if anyone emails me at robertindries.com, and if they mention that they heard about me on your podcast, then I promise to reply to them.
Okay. Awesome. That is so awesome. And I'll make sure that's in the show notes. Robert, it's been an honor and a pleasure to talk to you. And I hope that we can connect again, because there's so much more I want to pull from you, man. It's keep doing what you're doing. And thank you so much for taking this time. I know how busy you are.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, folks, we're going to leave it there. This has been Kenny and Robert with the Leading from the Middle podcast. We'll talk to you real soon.